Hi everybody, welcome to my live. Thanks for joining me. And as always, man, thank you very much for watching these lives. It means so much to me to watch those numbers go up and know that you are listening to what I have to say. I love that. So tonight's going to be just a little bit different. Tonight we are going to have a history lesson. It's going to be a story time. And of course, at the end, there's going to be a life lesson to go along with it. And actually, tonight we have 2 life lessons to go along with it. So let's jump into it. Oh, before I do, though, for those of you who are just getting back from LA, from UPW, I hope you had an absolutely amazing time. I know it's a great experience. So I hope you really dug into that. All right, so let's get to our history lesson and our story. So in the 20th century, in the music world, well, in art and architecture too, it was the time of the isms. So we had Impressionism at the very beginning of the century. We had nationalism, exoticism, experimentalism, and that's the one we're going to dwell on, because in mid-20th century there was a composer by the name of John Cage. Now, if you're not into music, you probably have never heard of John Cage before, but he's quite a story to go with it. See, John Cage is a theorist, which means to us musicians that he knows music. He knows how this works. He's studied all of the classical masters. He is a composer, and he's a philosopher. And some would say that he's not so much of a philosopher and really not that much of a composer either. But John Cage really doesn't care. John Cage had a real affinity with sound and the way we sort of categorize everything, the need to categorize sounds, and that fascination spilled over into the fascination of silence, I guess. So he became really interested in sound, what sound was, and what silence was. And so he was locked in an anechoic chamber at one time, a soundproof room at the university, UCLA, I believe it was. And he wanted to experience complete silence. But while he was locked into this soundproof room, he heard a low tone and he heard a high-pitched tone. When he came out, the scientist explained to him that the low-pitched tone was the blood pumping through his body, and the high-pitched tone was the sound of his nervous system working. And he later wrote that he was a walking symphony, and he never intended to be that. So you see kind of where he's going with sound. Now in 1952, he composed a piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And I say composed because it's all written out. It's exactly dictated as to how the piece should go, as all musical compositions are. But this one was a little bit different, and you need to see this to experience it. And I'll put the link to the video in the comments section. And what you're going to see, I'll tell you so it's not a surprise, what you're going to see is a grand piano on stage, and the performer will walk out in his tuxedo, bow to the applause, and then he'll sit at the piano, set a watch on top of the piano, and then he will close the piano lid and sit in silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Now there are a couple other things that happen in the piece, but those are largely irrelevant for this. Either way, it's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. So I play this video for my students, and I ask them, what did you hear? And the response is always, I heard nothing. It's silent. Now, when I was an undergrad, I also thought John Cage was the epitome of a nutcase. But working through my master's program and through my doctoral work, I did a little bit more study about him and his philosophies and really realized the genius that this man was. I play the video to my students a second time, and this time, with no other explanation, I say, just make sure you listen very carefully. And this time when I play it, I ask the same question. What did you hear? Well, now this time they heard somebody coughing. Now they heard somebody shuffling in their seats. They heard people rustling through their programs trying to figure out what's going on. They had a list of all of these sounds that were happening. Now, whether or not it's music, that's a huge debate, and we're not even going to get into that. But the point is, and what John Cage states, is that when the intended stimuli is missing, we block out everything else that's happening around it. The intended stimuli, the piano, was absent, and so we shut it off as complete silence when actually an entire plethora of sounds were going on around it. And we as humans do that on a daily basis. We shoot for the intended stimuli, and if that's absent, we shut out everything that goes around it. I mean, think about our day. Do you remember what your kids wore to school today? From the time you woke up to noon, how many people said good morning to you? Do you remember who they were? What kind of shoes were your boss wearing? Things like that, things that we don't even pay attention to. And you think, well, it's insignificant, it doesn't matter. It's the little things. Well, the little things are the big things, and what is insignificant to us may be incredibly significant to somebody else. Do you remember the last time you asked somebody a very important question and they didn't answer you? They actually answered with their body language and probably told you more than you needed to know. Did you notice? It happened. See, lots of times opportunity knocks and we don't even know it. We're so caught up in that vicious cycle of redundancy, remember from the last video, that when fate, the universe, lays out something in front of us, we don't even see it because we're so focused on what we believe the intended stimuli is, which is our cycle of redundancy. We have to keep our eyes open, keep our ears open, keep our thoughts and our minds open. We have to soak all of this in. It's important not just to us, but to those around us. That was lesson number 1. Now to lesson number 2. I developed a trick. I shouldn't say I developed a trick. I discovered a trick to teaching a kid to ride a bicycle very quickly and very easily. And my youngest daughter had a friend over one time, many years ago, for the intent of trying to teach her how to ride a bike. She has tried and wasn't successful those times. But within 5 or 10 minutes or so, I had her riding around our circle drive. We live out in the country. There's a big gravel circle drive. So as she rode around this circle drive, there's a spot where there's a washout in the gravel. So it's like a gravel pothole. And every time she would come around to that spot, she would hit that pothole and tip over. She had 20 yards to get through this pothole, but every time she came around, she hit it. Why? Because she was looking at it. And so I taught her not to look at it, taught her to look to where you want to go, and she did, and she was fine. The problem with her was that she made the pothole her intended stimuli. And we'll always focus on that intended stimuli. You will always hit what you're looking at every time. Think about those people we talked about in the previous videos who wake up on a Monday morning and they complain about Mondays and Mondays suck, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, ask them how their day was. And they're going to say, it was terrible. Yeah, I suppose it was. It's because you made Monday sucking your intended stimuli. You're going to hit it, and that's what's going to happen. You've got to break yourself out of that. You've got to raise your level of thinking, raise everybody else up around you, and be open to all of those outside things that are happening. So real short and easy tonight. I hope you guys had a fantastic day, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, leave a like, please share it, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.